Last year, I gave a talk at Mind States. I talked for 45, 50 minutes about social networks, organizing principles, new forms of communication, BitTorrent, media distribution networks, and how this was all changing the way we communicate. And we opened the audience to questions, and the first question was about the I Ching and the end of time. I hadn't talked about that, but because I'm associated with McKenna, and because people want to believe in this impending end of everything, despite any evidence they may or may not have of their own senses, they basically completely ignored everything I'd said in the hour before that, and just wanted to focus on this one idea of this. Now, I'm making a public statement here today at Palenque Norte. I have grown weary of this. I have had enough. And fortunately, I'll have no more of this. For now, I will simply do more. Now, for my part, I have often equated the eschaton with the idea of technological singularity. That's what I want to talk about now. That's a term that was coined by science fiction author Werner Vinci in a lecture that he gave at NASA Ames back in 1993. I'm a friend of Werner's, and he and I talked about technological singularity at great length, philosophical terms. And I remember in one of our first conversations, he suddenly just sort of stiffened up and said, "You're a gradualist!" As if it were some sort of slam. Now, I am perfectly willing to admit that this may be true. And I do admit that I hold to a certain sort of technological determinism. I do believe that we will ascend into something that at this moment is ineffable and unknowable and utterly different. But will this happen in a twinkling of an eye? I think maybe in retrospect it will look that way after we have recognized that the singularity has occurred. Now, a lot of people talk about the technological singularity as tied up into the idea of the rise of artificial intelligence. And if you read all of the signs as you were coming into camp, you saw a long quote by Ray Kurzweil, whom I'll come to a little bit later, who's sort of the main proponent of this idea. I do not believe that there is such a thing as artificial intelligence. I don't believe that there's any sort of superhuman intelligence that will arise and overwhelm us all. It simply doesn't work that way. We don't have precedents in the natural world for that, or any historical or scientific record that it has ever happened. Instead, nature works by subsumption. When something new emerges, it subsumes the forms that came before it. The mitochondria, which are in every cell in your body, are proof that this is the way that nature works. And so, what I would say is that there is no such thing as artificial intelligence. There is only intelligence, whether it's a vegetable, or animal, or mineral. All intelligence is one. So, back to Kurzweil. He's perhaps the most visible proponent of technological singularity. And for years, through his books, he's promoted the idea of another kind of eschaton, where the machine intelligences multiply their capabilities so rapidly that they transcend all forms of human understanding. And he says that's the singularity. And it seems to me that as interesting as that idea sounds, and kind of rational as it sounds, it actually could only be possible if those machines were born in a universe entirely separate from us. But this is not that world. And we can draw a line between ourselves and our machines, no more than I can draw a line between myself and my eyeglasses. Pretty blurry. These are prosthetics, these machines, or perhaps looking the other way around, we are theirs. But neither can really exist without the other. So this rise of artificial intelligence is a misapprehension. The rise of intelligence, however, that seems historically inevitable. And so, with a great deal of skepticism, because I've known a lot about Chris Weil's ideas. I sat through a lecture by him at a conference in Pisa just a few months ago that we were both speaking at. Now, when I spoke about the rise of something that I'm calling hyperintelligence. You all know what hyperintelligence is, though you've never heard the word before because you've all used Wikipedia. All right? Wikipedia is the first identifiable artifact of the age of hyperintelligence. It is the collective and collected knowledge of a billion human minds. It's not artificial intelligence, it's just intelligence. And it's a whole lot more than we've ever had before. So, that's what I said. Then Kurzweil spoke, and I braced myself for a descent into bullshit. Into an exploration of ideas that I thought had no fundamental grounding in the reality of the world. And to my shock and my surprise, I found that Kurzweil had recanted. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, in Kurzweil's new future, we designed the intelligences using the only guide we have at hand, our human brains. We can now design and simulate some of the simpler neural structures that we have in our heads. For example, the cerebellum, the back of your head, which controls all of your coordination. There are only 4 kinds of nerve cells in the cerebellum, and when you're born and grow, all your brain does, all your genes do, is just make lots and lots and lots of copies of those 4 kinds of cells. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. But once you're born and you're out there in the world, every movement you make, every interaction you have, causes those cells to connect together in different ways. And so you can start out with something that's very simple and completely undifferentiated, and then end up with someone who can dance, who can balance, who can laugh, who can sing, because we grow into it through our interaction in the world. And now Kurzweil is saying, gee, this is what we're going to be teaching the computers how to do. This is how we're going to bootstrap the computers into intelligence. In other words, intelligence cannot be made. Intelligence can only be grown. And that means that in essence, the machines are no different than ourselves. We spend our lives, in particular our lives as young children, emerging into intelligence. Now this is known technically as constructivism. It's a field pioneered by a Swiss child psychologist named Jean Piaget. And Jean Piaget realized that all children are absolutely perfect scientists, that they go out into the world armed with hypotheses about the world and how it works, and they put these hypotheses to the test. And if they pass the test, they're subsumed and other hypotheses are built upon them. And if they fail, the hypotheses are altered and then put to the test again. And this is what all children do all the time. And if we're wise, this is what all grown-ups do all the time. So all our children do this all the time, and we're teaching our machines to do it as well. So what does this mean? This means that these are not our masters we're talking about. These are our children. And how could we not help but love our children? How could they not help but love us? Okay, yes, we may be the weird, cranky, opinionated, elderly relatives. Absolutely, to these new beings. But we will be beloved because we are the weird, cranky, unusual relatives. And hopefully we will be respected for our wisdom because we've been around the block of it and we can teach them things that they cannot know themselves. That at least is the theory. But unlike the other theories about technological singularity, this is one that we can put to the test. And unlike the theories proposed, enthusiastically believed in without really any supporting evidence about a shuddering, stuttering, catastrophic drop off the cataracts of history, this at least has observational evidence to support it. That seems to me to be the way the world actually works. That, I believe, is the future. Oh, thank you.